Hey y'all, how's it going? Welcome back. It's Mia, and today we are discussing spoilers for Black Panther Wakanda Forever. And as you can see, I have a special guest with me. This is Natalie, my bestest friend since high school. Natalie, how are you doing today? You're already showing off.
I am showing off. I'm about to cry. This is really sad. It was a sad movie. Can I use my locks as a tissue? No, but you are my friend. We've been friends since before Endgame,
Way
probably right
before
around
game.
Iron Man 1. Like we've been friends since high school a long, long time. And I won't tell you how old he is, but we may have a reunion coming up soon. I'll just
I
say that.
know. So, what is your level of knowledge when it comes to the MCU? Are you a mega expert?
I am enjoying Wakanda Forever, Black Women's Wakanda Forever weekend. Um, I do see Marvel just because I like to go, I like to go to the movies. I always have. Um, I'm not as good as you like the Disney cruises, the every
You're
Marvel
getting
series
into the
ever.
niche, the nooks and
No,
crannies of
like I'm
Marvel.
not gonna get, oh, they did this in WandaVision, so this is what they're doing now. Like I'm not gonna get that. But I mean, like a lot of black people, Black Panther one was very significant, to a lot of people, and just that the representation and how I believe that was $1 billion movie, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. So just how like seeing us on a stage that large, and then obviously, I mean, you've done a book about it. I have that, buy that. It's on Amazon about Chadwick Boseman passing, and the unfortunate circumstances of that. And I think that just really hit hard in the pandemic when everybody was kind of sheltered, and just how he chose to handle that privately. I'm sure, which was best decision for him and his family at the time. And then just like I think like everybody, I'm just expecting like, what are they gonna do? What's
Mm-hmm.
gonna happen next? Everybody's thinking that when they come in, and it's an immense amount of pressure. Excuse me. So like I think for us as fans and like people who maybe haven't met Chad, didn't get a chance to meet Chad, like didn't work with him intensively, whether it was on like Disney, the marketing team, other
Mm-hmm.
films, the cast of this actual film, Ryan Coogler, like we are fans. Some of us were super fans. I won't put you in that category, but like they actually knew this man, knew this person. So for that reason, I think I went into the film giving it a lot of grace because I couldn't imagine like coming back to that environment as a employee, because they
Mm-hmm.
are technically, they're actors, and a lot of the cast is very, very talented, but they're coming back as an employee, and they lost a family member, you know.
Yeah. Yeah. And a lot of people were saying, like, obviously, we're like, okay, Ryan Coogler wrote the script, he had everything ready, and then Chadwick Boseman died. So it was kind of like, I imagine a scramble to try to, rewrite a script, but you also have to kind of overcome this hardship of, your lead actor died. So I guess that's what I was wondering was, do you think that given all the circumstances and having to incorporate, okay, we know that we're going to basically I have to write off T'Challa. Do you think that they did a good job, adequate job at kind of navigating through that?
I think this in this film, it is clear that they were grieving,
Mm-hmm.
and I think the plot is like somebody going through grief, like it's like somebody going through a death, it's
Yeah.
like somebody going through a breakup, it's like somebody going through something, a big life change, something monumental where it's not linear and it's not going to connect, and that's where some of the disconnect was for me. But I saw it twice.
Yeah.
um so I definitely feel like there were some plot holes from a script standpoint, if that makes sense.
Ooh, okay.
But
Plot holes as well.
yeah, it was just it was some reasoning, and it was two decisions you already know. Well, actually, you don't because you didn't let me talk about it.
What
But there were
was?
two decisions that I just did not agree with in the movie, and I think a
Mm-hmm.
lot of people are going to come out that way. But in terms of like cinematography, a big budget movie, big body bins, big Marvel, Big Mouth stepping on everybody's foot. Like it came off as a well-produced movie.
Oh
As
yeah.
a concrete project, as something that was done, in reference. There's a lot of talk about whether they're next, recasting, whatever. But this movie could not have been that. Not right away. Especially with the loss of Chadwick, and then like a lot of foundational cast members did not return or return very briefly.
Right.
So that was also a thing. Like it was they were up against a lot.
Yeah.
So yeah, that's like my initial first impressions.
Okay. I can't let you off the hook though without talking about those two big plot holes. I wouldn't be a good journalist if I just left that hanging.
Okay, come on. So the two big plot holes. Well, I mean, are we going to talk about the movie chronologically? Because if not, I'll just go straight into spoilers.
Yeah, I've got it. We're going to talk about it in sections, but I don't mind us jumping around.
Okay, so for me, the biggest, wouldn't even know if I would call it a plot hole, but it was a device that I don't think advanced the plot, in my opinion, or wasn't needed to advance the plot. And that was obviously the death of Queen Ramonda Angela Bassett. This is the Angela Bassett Stan account. So I'm wondering if there was like something behind the scenes, because obviously she's a stunning woman, but she's in her 60s and maybe she just didn't want to be a part. And she's had a lot of great projects. She's an Oscar nominee, I believe. So maybe she just didn't want to continue to be a part of the MCU in that way. But I just felt like her death to motivate Shuri was not, I just don't think it was necessary. And listen to other reviews and stuff, and a lot of the work that Ryan Coogler has done, like outside of Black Panther, like Creed, like Fruitvale, like a lot of impactful projects, they do kind of center around trauma and things like that. And I think when you see Black people on the screen, we want escapism too.
Right.
And I just felt like we knew we had one death, and that was a life circumstance, and that was out of their control. So why throw in?
Yeah,
we losing brothers, we losing mamas, we fathers. Like, what's? I called my mom yesterday, and my dad, and my brother, like, and my granny. Like, it's
all right, tell your family you love them.
Right. Like, and for a lot of Black people, we do have chosen family. Like, we do have close friends. But I just felt like that wasn't entirely necessary. And that leads me to my second plot point. The grandma's the baby. So why? So we're losing a mom, we're losing a grandma. With that mid-credit scene with Junior T'Challa Toussaint, which is a great nod to Haiti. But I just felt like she could have fit in the story, even if Angela Bassett only wanted to come back in a minimal role. Like, even at the end when they showed her in the ancestral plane, it just seemed random, and it seemed like a way to fix stuff. But I felt like Shuri could have gotten there, like even if she was just hurt, she was in a coma, like when Namor came and stuff. Like even if she was hurt, if she was in a coma, if the castle was left defenseless, like it was just so many things where I felt like Wakanda was smarter than that, and the death of like almost an entire royal family kind of. That one was circumstantial, one had already happened, but this one just felt like
right. I was gonna ask you, I was like, did Ramona have to die in this film? I was like, to me it seems excessive, because I think what they were trying to do is like with T'Challa's story, right? He had this whole arc where in the previous movie his father died, and
that was a Civil War, right?
So that was the catalyst for him, obviously stepping up, becoming king, trying to figure out what kind of king he's going to be. And so for me, I was like, I feel like they're trying to parallel that, but like, this is the female version. Like, okay, T'Challa had his dad and Shuri had his mom. But I was like, here's the thing. Shuri is still part of this family. It's not like T'Challa wasn't her brother and, the king wasn't her father. So I was like, she has all of that as fuel for her to, I don't know, go through her character change, right? They all go through like arc, and they grow and they're stronger from that.
And I will say, like, the plot, like they tried to get there, like at the beginning when she was trying to create the heart-shaped urban, then she took like a year-long break from doing that. And then she needed something else to like motivate her and get her there and to make the herb. But I felt like the bracelet, the vibranium, certain things that they were using would have been enough to do that. And I just don't think the mom had that. Or like, if I had control of Marvel, Angela Bassett is really, really hurt. They're sustaining her in like some type of coma. You know how they sustain Chadwick? It's like some type of coma. Then she makes the heart-shaped herb. Well, I guess Angela couldn't take it. She's not gonna be Black Panther. But
find a way.
Something. Yeah.
I was like, still, like, what happened? The events prior to that was Namor came to her city, blew everything up, destroyed it. They had EMTs walking off, a cliff, and they probably died. So I'm like, people died. I think that alone would have been enough trauma to make her upset and be like, this means
very
more.
Serious. And Wakanda, like their capital city, drowned.
Yeah.
So I'm like,
is that not enough?
I'm in your city, like let's go ahead and do that. And again, also like just Namor's motivation, it just felt like the Black and brown infighting. It was just it felt like a lot. Like we could have teamed up.
Exactly.
I mean, we're from Chicago. We down to Pilsen and Bronzeville meet occasionally. Like we just could have we could have done a little bit better with that. So I just felt like the script was not. It didn't hit. And then like again, we'll get to the mid-credit scene at the end, but it was just not.
Yeah, to me, I don't know if you had seen all of my like spoiler-free review, but my biggest problem was that to me, it wasn't a very balanced movie. And I did enjoy this movie. I was like, the strongest part of this film was when they tried to hit those emotional scenes and yada, yada, yada. But to me, it felt almost too Namor heavy to the point where I was like, I feel like he needs to have his own movie just because there was a lot of weeds that we had to dig through, like his backstory, find out he's a mutant, you find out what happened with his mother, you find out what happened to the village. And I think it was a great backstory. Like I don't have any problems with that. But to me, it just it felt largely uneven. Did you feel that way watching it?
Yes. And I was fine with it. I was actually fine with the time that they spent on Namor, but I think they tried to introduce too many characters at one, like Michaela Cole's character, Riri Williams' character with Ironheart. Like Disney is always good for a 10 for one, 1,000 for one, a 5 for one. But with the pressure behind this movie, it was not like an ensemble casting. Yeah. So I definitely understood why we had to know Namor's motivations. They were very similar to Wakanda, and we are an indigenous, we are an African, we are a tribe of people that have these great resources and this great wealth, and we can help others, but it can come at the cost to us in where we stand in a global context. And that's real. We've seen that happen. It's happening now. It's happened in the past. So that's very real from just where we stand in the Western world, but it just didn't hit like it was supposed to. And that's what we, again, giving it all the grace we talked about in the beginning.
Yeah. What was I going to say? Yeah. Okay. First of all, to the point of like too many characters, I had that in my notes and I was like, have you seen Eternals? No, that's fine. Cause it's like the worst rated Marvel movie ever. Like maybe even next to Morbius, which is it's a whole other thing. But the whole problem with Eternals was that I think you had at least 10 superheroes that were part of this kind of like Justice League group. So instead of it being like Avengers, where, Iron Man had a movie and Thor and Captain America, and then they finally all came together, Eternals they're like, we just gonna introduce them all at once and see what happens. And it was a disaster because it was too many people vying for too much screen time. So that's how I kind of felt about Black Panther, was the fact that, like I said, the core of the movie was letting these characters grieve. And I think maybe if they had introduced a smaller villain or something a little bit, less substantial, that would have worked. But I think the movie also had like a POV problem. Like, okay, who is the protagonist of the story? Because it's like at the beginning, it's kind of Ramonda and she's at the UN and you're like, okay, I can see her, she's grieving. And then halfway through the middle, they switch to Namor, and it's like, okay, is this his story now? And then when Ramonda dies, then it shifts to Shuri. So I was just like, I don't know, I would have preferred if the whole way through they had focused on Shuri as kind of like the central character. So
right. And I mean, I wouldn't say, like, again, the more didn't take away anything from me. Like, it was the plot, how they did it, how he got there, like very formidable opponent, like Wakanda going up against another country with vibranium or a vibranium like plant. Like that was all good, but it was just the logic and the reasoning for them like attacking each other, and just some of the fight scenes were like really dumb. So you gonna leave your mom at the crib with nobody? You gonna fire a Koye with no benefits package, and we're under a threat?
Right,
like,
since they're walking.
It just is not making sense. It's not clicking. And then for Namor to just come up and or for him, I get his beef because he's like, you kind of blew up my spot, man. We've been down here chilling for centuries. I really need you to be very much, cool. But I just feel like after Infinity War, was it when Thanos came up to Wakanda? He was all of it. Like, we're supposed to be powerful and impenetrable, and then we don't even really have an alarm system. We just leave the lights on when we are from home. So somebody thinks we're home. We just leave the lights on when we go on vacation. Like, we're not really like that. The dog in the back, and we have a beware of dog sign with no dog. Like, it's just they're not. It just, a lot of things did not click in terms of the two tribes fighting each other. But I've talked so much about what I didn't like. Maybe I should talk about the things that I really do. I don't know.
Listen, it's cool. We're like, that's how these discussions.
Okay.
Yeah, that's how these things go. Because it's like, you compare and contrast, right? It's like, okay, this went really well, but maybe it could have been better in this aspect. I was gonna say, I don't know. I guess I never had any problem with Namor's logic and his whole, I'm trying to still wrap my head around it, because he was like, okay, I want the scientist, and you either let me kill her or I'll wage war on the entire world, and I'm going to start with you first. But number one, Wakanda really didn't have anything to do with it in the first place. It really should have been the United States. Just Wakanda was just protecting her.
Now, why am I in it?
Right. And then my brother made a good point. He was like, well, at that rate, he's really just on a revenge streak, because who's to say now that they've already made this machine, who's to say they can't go back and make it again? That's just, maybe I'm thinking a little bit too deep into
and it's so interesting that you said it, because at the end, in the final credits, he's like, well, Wakanda will come. People, it's unprotected. They need an ally. So now Wakanda, will come. But I just felt like they left it so open.
Yeah.
Like, I don't want, who takes over Wakanda after Shuri? Are we going to have a time jump? Like,
I think they tried to, by that end section, they tried to insinuate that M'Baku was gonna be the king, because he was like, I'm here and I'm unchallenged. Yeah. So he comes there,
he just clocked in on his shift. I thought they just clocked in. He was doing a time and a half. I thought that's what he was doing. I didn't really catch that. And I saw it twice. I thought he was just being silly at the end.
Right. So I think that's that. And Shuri is like,
the Black Panther, but not the ruler.
Right. So I'm assuming that's where they're going. But yeah, I almost wondered. I was like, I feel like they did have a strong sort of story plot where they were like, hey, especially at the end of Black Panther, where they were like, hey, we're going to open up our world or open up our country to the rest of the world, and let's see what happens. And so I feel like that was the big thing that they dropped in this story, was that they had a little bit of that in the beginning where the French people, I thought
that was very effective. Yeah, like showing their power, showing their might, showing that they have to be under jurisdiction. And then that again speaks to, both the Morris tribe and the Wakandans fighting, like colonialism, other forces, outside threats. And that was a huge part of even just like the opening scene at the beginning, Black Panther, when they showed like, the slave ships. They showed like people mining for resources. They showed in that animation when like it was like T'Challa talking to T'Chaka. I think his dad was telling him about like the legend of the Panther, and then we cut to Sterling K. Brown's character, who was Michael B. Jordan's dad. But yeah, so it hit all those notes, and again, just with how much grace I went into the film, and just loving the franchise and loving Black and brown people getting these opportunities on a high level stage, and I hope they continue. Like, it's definitely worth the 3. It's definitely worth the 4. Like, let the series play out, but they got a lot of work to do.
Yeah, the big thing was, I think with this story, they kind of had to get out the way of telling the story of why T'Challa died. That was a big roadblock, but again, I think it'll be fine down the road.
And now they gotta get out of the way of why Queen Ramonda died. So,
oh God. I have a question though. Do you think Namor is redeemable after? That was my next question.
I like it.
There's been a lot of thirst for him. I'm on that ship, honestly. I'm down with it. Anyway, do you think he's redeemable after all that? Because he charmed Shuri. I think he kind of charmed her when she was down there and, doing her thing. But then he goes and wages war on her country, floods her city, kills her mother. I'm like, was it smart of her to kind of olive branch him at the end like that?
And it's so funny that you say that, because then we're going to get into my favorite part of the movie. And who she was talking to when she was cooking up the plan and taking the herb. But yeah, it's tough. And they alluded to that, and they said, I think they're just waiting on Wakanda to fall also, or Wakanda to need their help and to bend back to them. And it's going to be like a continuous power struggle. But to be honest, to put it in their frame of mind, like even when I think Okoye, Queen Ramonda, and Shuri were inside of the lab, and they were like, how could there be another plant? Like, how could there be another meteorite? So just literally, I think we could have spent a little more time on that. Like, how would we attack a threat? Like, and just not, like, we had no idea this existed for centuries, because it's just so buried, and they have all the same technology we do. And then I think that would have addressed some of the plot holes in like the fight scenes and how they chose to attack.
That's a good point.
Because it's just
like we just found out about this magical ancient society. Like, okay, how are we going to go to war against them?
Like, imagine being from New York all your life and then you try to eat this. Like, if this is all the same ingredients, but it's very new to me.
Exactly.
Like, so, it's not foldable. You got to attack it different. You got to come at it just a little bit differently. And I felt like they just brushed over that, glossed over that, tried to introduce 1,001 new people, just cameos, stuff like that. Tried to bring back the old character. But we'll get into that.
So, okay, yes. So do you think that, number one, do you want to see Namor come back?
Yes, but in a limited role, or in his own franchise.
And would he be a hero or a villain?
I think he's an anti-hero. I don't think it's necessarily, and I will say something Marvel does well, like even with Killmonger, like in Thanos and a couple other villains, like they all have strong motivations for why they do what they do. It's not black and white. It's not like this person is just inherently evil for the sake of evil being. It's, I'm trying to protect my own people. I'm trying to balance the world out. I'm trying to protect my kids. Have this backstory. So they're very good at narrative building an origin. And I feel like Namor has a strong enough origin to where we want to see more. But I just hope they don't fumble it with how they flesh them out. I really love just culturally seeing like everything that they did with the Mayans, with us speaking, their indigenous tongue, as well as having the Spanish in the movie. And Lupita, as you know, spent time in Mexico, grew up there. So to have her transition like in and out, to have Namor's people transition in and out, as well as him like knowing English and things like that, and how he would speak to people, I thought it was really, really well done.
Awesome. So Lupita. Oh, she was so cute. I liked her it almost looks like she was wearing an Encanto dress, like with obviously the traditional sort of Mexican dress. That was so cute. But let us get to, because we got 10 minutes left here. Let us get to Killmonger, because I think you want to say something about that. And Shuri, she was going to the ancestral plane, trying to hope her mother would come and give her some guidance, and it ends up being Eric Killmonger. I will say, did you expect him to show up at all in this movie?
Ooh. I mean, I saw it twice, so it's like the second time. It was still
the first time. Oh, okay.
The honest question I have: how do you get a fresh retwist in the ancestral plane? Because see, I have locks, and it's very hard for me to get an appointment. And he was crisp up. Because remember, in the first film, he only had a little bit of locks.
Right. He had a lot of growth. Maybe it's
dreaded down.
The magic.
In the ancestral plane. So
it's the magic.
Like, how do you get that? Does he do his own research? Does he have a lot of time up there? Was he in a different, and his surrounding was kind of like, his was a purple, but it was much darker. It was very different. So was he in a different level? Like, how does that work with Boston?
Ooh,
but you know, like, because T'Challa, Queen Ramonda, and T'Chaka, well, they didn't show T'Challa in the ancestral plane, but King T'Chaka and Queen Ramonda were in like around the tree. They were kind of field wildlife, and his was kind of like darker, that fire there. So I think that cameo was really good, because another critique of mine, the film, is that there weren't a lot of Black men in the film, a lot of Black male representation, and I thought the women did well. I have no problem with Shuri being the Black Panther now, but it was just like Michael Jordan was a quick cameo, and then M'Baku was really only used like for laughs. I didn't really catch that part at the end, but he was really only used for laughs.
He should have had more time.
And just to show how strong Namor is, because, you know, like, he's one of the bigger, like, the Jabari tribe is one of the bigger, stronger, like, tribes. But he was really only used, like, when he said, I would have had Namor's, you know, head or whatever, and pulled up on him and got cooked. And that was it. So it was good seeing Killmonger. It was good, like, acknowledging that, like, you know, families are messy, and sometimes we have motivations that blind us because it's coming from a place of trauma. And it makes perfect sense that she would see him, because that's the place she was coming. She was going down that path.
Yeah, I thought that was a good way, number one, to bring back a fan favorite character without saying he's not dead, right? And then second, as I was thinking about it, I was like, it was kind of a good way to help her navigate through her grief. It was kind of like she was bottling all her emotions up this whole film. And it was kind of like him provoking her, was like shaking that bottle of soda, or, you know, we call it pop, right? And then add that on top of the Namor stuff, him attacking, and then it was just kind of like she exploded, and she finally reached this point of clarity to where even at the very end, right, she finally had that ability to make peace, burn her mourning clothes and all of that.
Yeah. So again, like I said, the movie reads like somebody going through grief. It's very like shocking, it's very traumatic. Then, you know, you bargain, you bury yourself in your work. And then I think with the mom, it didn't have to necessarily be a plot device for her all out dying, but with the mom, it was that pushed her to anger. And then she eventually got to, you know, like acceptance. I don't have all the stages in front of me, but when she was in that anger phase, that's why she saw Killmonger. And it was so interesting to me also with him that just Shuri saw him and she didn't say, like Lupita asked her.
Yeah.
Didn't
she
say
kept it to herself. Yeah.
I feel like they could have fleshed that out just a little bit.
Yeah. More. What was the reasoning? Yeah.
Yeah. What was the reason?
All right. Let's fast forward finally as our last kind of talk about that post-credits scene. Now, to be honest, I read leaks for this. I read leaks for this movie. Most of them I forgot anyway. That just kind of happens. But I did know that there was going to be an introduction of a son. I just didn't know like when it happened in the film. So did that shock you? What was your response there?
That took me completely by surprise. Was he hiding his kid from the world or hiding his world from the kid? Like, come on, Pusha T. What that? I've been following it. You know, I am of the opinion that maybe they should eventually recast, just because I work in a media space. I know what representation means to people. I know how it's important. I think Chad would at some point would have had to step away from the role, even if he had, you know, a long, healthy life, if his life wasn't unfortunately cut short. I think at some point they would have had to recast, even if it was another 5 or 10 years down the line of the franchise. But yeah, it was just super shocking to me. And there's a couple of points on that that I'm gonna walk you through that I noticed on the second time. So when they were in the bush and they were about to burn the grieving clothes, the white clothes, the queen said, you know, there's something I want to tell you.
Yeah.
There's something you should know. So that was like one point. Then it was, you know, like we missed you at the funeral. We didn't see you at the funeral. And if you notice, the boy was one of the first people to talk to the queen. And the queen was like nice with the children. She was playing with the children. She was saying hello as she was going through the school, but like it was no connect. Like I'm really close to my granny. So when my granny comes, it's, oh my God, right. And if she already knew that the boy existed, why wasn't like it a closer connection? They could have handed at it without us like catching it right away. For what her not Chadwick, but T'Challa and Nakia's character like kind of went through and kind of had, and then I know in the comics he was eventually with Storm, not
right. Yeah, that's a whole nother thing.
So it's like that, but I love how they use Haiti, how she went to Haiti, like that country, especially you know, just knowing history and heritage and being the first free Black republic in the New World. How that happened, and that was very symbolic for them to go there. And then when they got to the end at the credit scene, it was just like a 2-sentence, 3-sentence, like a quick little paragraph explainer. Very, very cute name with Toussaint, and touching on the history of Haiti, but it was like a very quick explainer, like, oh, you know, we just
so that scene didn't move you.
No, I just wanted to see, like, and then where did they go for it? Like, Kang is coming. They're gonna have to do a time jump. Are we gonna have to wait till the baby grows up? Are we gonna see Teen T'Challa next?
Yeah.
And it just felt kind of messy. And then, you know, I would just like to see like a nice, cute, and Indian families are different, but I just would have liked to see like a nice, cute, full Black family. Because we already lost a mom. This kid is growing up without his dad, without his grandma. He only has his auntie and his mom, who was a spy. Like, what? And that's not to say he can't learn and train with the Dora Milaje, but he's growing up away from Wakanda. So it's so much that their little boy and his
I know.
So that just kind of made me sad. And that was my number 2 big point.
Okay. Well, we're running out of time here, so I'm gonna have some final thoughts. I think number 1, unfortunately, as you talking about the kid growing up alone, I'm like, yeah, and it's also a product of just being in the MCU. Everyone's parents died. Someone's close died. So it's like a double whammy, unfortunate circumstance. But I did find that scene to be emotional. But I also think, okay, what happens next? Because I don't think he'd be ready to do anything until he's at least 14. And we've already had a time jump with the Thanos snap. And, you know, so it's like, are we going to have to wait another maybe like 8 to 10 years for him to grow up? So I think it's cute. I don't know if they could use him in the future, maybe, but I still thought it was cute. So we had 60 seconds left before Zoom turns off on us.
But yeah, go ahead.
So closing thoughts in like 10 seconds. Anything you else want to say?
If I had to rank the movie, it would be a solid 7, and the 7 is off the strength of the first movie, the nostalgia of the first movie, and the circumstances that they had to hit, and cover. All right,
I think so too. I gave it like a B-, and it really it's coming back to Wakanda was the big draw. So I'm gonna leave it here, Natalie. Thank you so much for showing up.
Make the channel. Look, Mama, I made it.
And y'all, please leave a like if you enjoyed this. Subscribe for more, and maybe Natalie will be back. She was well behaved. She don't behave like this normally. So.
Bye, girl.